So my goal in this video is to take what we learned with one-step equations and apply it here to two-step equations. Very uncreative names here with our names of equation types. With one-step equations, we just had one operation, one number that we were undoing. Here, we're going to have two operations and two numbers that we need to get rid of to get our variable alone. So just to review some of the steps that we use to isolate and solve for our variables. First and foremost, you need to isolate the variable. That's what we're after, and so I do that by circling the variable. We've been practicing that with our one-step equations. After that, what's really important here, because there's two different steps, is that we have to kind of work backwards in PEMDAS, or order of operations. So normally addition and subtraction comes at the end of PEMDAS. So because of that, and because we're working backwards, those are the first two operations you need to undo. Which means that in step number 3, we then can undo the multiplication and division, but we can't do that until we undo the addition or subtraction piece. Really, that's it. So let's see what that looks like in action. So here's our first example we're going to look at. Step number 1, again, is always to isolate the variable. And you know that I like to just set up the stage here by circling the number that's with the variable and drawing this line through the equal sign just to show our brains the two different sides of the equation we're working with. So we have this -3 then that's sitting here that we need to get rid of. That's step number 1. There's no multiplication or division yet. But our goal is to cancel it out. So as we learned with one-step equations, the opposite of a -3 is a +3. So we're going to add 3 to both sides. Step number 1 is then complete. So I like to draw this line just to show that physically. So I am then left with x divided by 4. That's still here, nothing changed. But now over on this side, since my -3 plus 3 cancel out, I have to take 73 and add 3 to get 76 now on this side. So now we're back down to just our one-step equation. I'm going to circle my x that I want by itself. And I see that it is bothered by this division bar and the 4. So we undo that by instead multiplying by 4 to get rid of that, which means that we have to multiply our other side by 4 over here. So now we're finally left with our x alone. And then 76 times 4 gives us 304 on the far side. So x equals 304. So I walked you through one. I'm curious what you can do with a problem almost identical to it here on the second one. So here's your second problem. I want you to copy it down in your notes. But what I'd like you to do then is pause the video and see if you can work through the two steps on your own, and then unpause and see if you and I got the same answer. So you see a very similar setup here. I started by circling the variable, and I was left then with a +2 to get rid of, which I did by subtracting 2 from both sides. That left me with x divided by -5 equals 80. And then to undo that division by -5, I had to multiply by -5, which left me with x equals -400. So let's try a different example now without division in the original problem. So this is going to be example number 3 here. We have, and I'm going to set up with my line down the equal sign, we have a -3 times x plus 8 equals 104. So our first step here is to get rid of our +8 by doing the opposite and subtracting 8. After I do that, my +8 and -8 cancel out, and I am left with -3x equals 104 minus 8, which gets me 96. Then I am left with isolating my x once again down to this one-step equation. I have -3 times x. They're smashed together here, which is another way of showing multiplication. So I'm going to divide by -3 on both sides. And that's going to leave me with x equals a positive 96 divided by a -3 leaves me with a -32. X equals -32. So again, I'm going to show you one more example, and I'm going to ask that you pause the video after you look at this. copy it down, and then see if you can work through it without me, and then unpause and check back in to see if we got the same answer. So again, I started by circling that 7x and drawing my line through the equal sign. I then was left with this minus 12 I needed to get rid of, and the opposite of that is a plus 12. So I did that, canceling my minus and plus 12 out, but that left me with a 7x over here that I got to bring down, and 142 plus 12 left me with 154. So then again, I needed this x by itself. 7 times x, to undo that, I needed to divide by 7, which got rid of those on this side. But that meant that I needed to divide by 7 on the other side, so I was left with x equals 22. So that brings us to the end of our little video notes. You can now move on to your next activity.